Seems legit.
Hey Legitimates! Welcome back to my channel. Today we are making the coffee clutch by Little Moo Designs. It's really cute. So I've done a rivet magnet because I forgot to put the normal magnet in that I was going to use, but that's fine. So when you open it, it's attached to the back, so you've got a little bit of extra room. Then we've got a zipper with a zipper end. You don't have to use a metal one, you can just put like a piece of vinyl there if you prefer. And then when we open it, we've got card slots on this side and just a plain other side, and it's got a slip pocket on the back. So if you would like to see how to make this, please stay tuned. Alright, let's get started. So there's not a lot of pieces to this, which I like, and I've got my hardware in my bowl. So on my flap, on the outside piece, I have put the fleece, fusible fleece. And so now I'm just going to put these right sides together. I'm going to grab a couple of clips just to make sure it doesn't shift while I'm trying to sew it together. There are a lot of pivoty points here. You don't need a lot of clips, just a few. So then, making sure that's lined up, I am going to stitch and back stitch. And then when we get to this angle, we're going to make sure the needle's down. And then pivot, needle down, oh I might need one more stitch, and then pivot so that we get nice crisp edges, needle down, pivot. Good. You want to make sure you get it lined up with those corners to get a nice edge, and then up. I'm also going to stitch in a little bit. I think this is going to help, and I might just jump over and do this side too. Stitch, back stitch, stitch, back stitch. I just think that'll help me, but you can just leave this completely open and tuck it under. You also want to snip that jump stitch because it's holding it together like that. Then I'm going to take some scissors and we're just going to trim off the excess at each of the pivoted points, like this, and here, and here. Cutting off that excess will just help us get nicer edges when we turn it through, because we want them sharp. That's why we picked the sharp option. So we're going to just turn it through. And as always, I'm going to use my turning stick because I love my turning stick. It makes me very happy. I'm just going to run it along the seams, and it should, I don't know if you can see that or not, but it's actually pushing out all of those points to make them more pointy, I guess. It's not foolproof, but it does pretty well. And then if you need to do any further stuff, we're going to grab our sew all, mainly in this corner. So see how it's super rounded? If you pop this in and kind of gouge out the corner, that's what I'm doing. You just got to be careful that you don't pull too many seams or snap the thread. Depending on what thread you're using, if you're too rough, you will damage it. So now, I'm going to pop my fingers into the hole that I left behind, and that should level out the fabric there, and I can just add some clips to hold it in place and closed, like so. That corner's still not quite right. It's close though. There we go. Alright. So now I'm going to top stitch just these edges. I'm going to leave that until I attach it to my piece. So if you want to, you can go up to a decorative stitch length. Today I'm going to do 4. Everyone has their favorite stitch lengths. Between 3 3/4 and 4 is my top stitching. And my sewing is always 2 1/2. You also want to make sure that we're pivoting in each of those corners. And then I'm just going to back stitch there as well. because that one will be sewn when we attach it. Oh, it's just occurred to me I didn't put my magnet in. It's alright, I'll use a rivet magnet. I'm so used to using rivet magnets now that I forget. But that's my flap done. We're just going to leave those clips on and set it aside. This is my slip pocket. So outside, inside, I'm going to put them right sides together and go back to a joining stitch length of 2.5. Stitch, back stitch. I'm just doing a 1/4 inch seam. It'll just make it a little bit bigger. It won't be enough of a problem to affect anything. And then I'm going to fold this over. It looks really crooked. Must just be the way I was holding it. We're going to pinch it over. Now if you need to iron this, by all means go right ahead. You can also put piping in this seam if you want to have like a fancy pocket. I'm just rolling that seam so it's right on the edge. And then I'm going to go back up to my decorative stitch length so everything matches. That's the other thing. You can actually just have the same stitch length for the whole thing if you want, especially if you've used fabric. If this was vinyl, I'd be more inclined to do only decorative stitching on the top. But that's now my slip pocket. This is one of my outsides. I've got 2 here. So I'm just going to line this up. No, I'm not. I'm going to take this and line this up first. So I need a ruler. So many rulers lying around these days. I'm going to find the center. I think that might help. So find center bottom, because then at least I know it's centered. Make a small clip, or you can mark it with an erasable pencil. And then I'm going to put that and measure up, and this is where it's going to go. So that's where the center is. So if I fold this in half, that's where the center is. And line those up like that. Now, I'm going to use these amazing things. These are hemming clips that I got from Temu. But they hold everything really, really well because they grab on more than these will. So it will help hold it right where it needs to be. I only need 2. And then I'm going to stitch here, back stitch. Backstitch. So that is now both closed and stitched on at the same time. Now I can remove the clips. And then I can take this and layer it over the top like so. I'm going to grab some clips around here just to hold it in place. So that will be the outside. And then when you open it, that's on the inside. You can also flip it around if you wanted to and have it so I had different fabrics. Now, I'm still on my top stitching length, but this is just a basting. So for those of you who don't know what basting is, it's just like temporary attaching. This is not the final stitching. So I'm doing it 1/8 of an inch, so it'll be in the seam allowance and not seen. The reason I like to stitch this is because it turns it into one piece, which I find easier to deal with when joining everything together. So that's why I've done it that way. Outside, fabulous. And then when you open it up, that's going to be on the inside. This is my front. I'll do that in a minute. These are my insides. So you were meant to put some card slots in here, which I have ironed in. As you can see, they're all ironed in. All of those measurements are in the pattern. That's why you're not watching me do it. And then I've trimmed it down to be the same size as the other side. Now I obviously don't want all of this to move. So what I'm going to do is I'm starting at the bottom and I'm going to top stitch the edge. I probably didn't need to go all the way to the top, but this will just stop them moving later. And then to do the other side, I still want to start from the bottom and go up. I don't want to go the other way. Never works out as well. So you want to go bottom and up like that. That's just going to hold them, so now that our card slots won't move. I'm going to fold it in half and find the center. Like that. And then with something erasable, so I'm going to use my Chaco pen, which is just chalk dust with a wheel to distribute it. I am going to draw a line up the center, and we're going to stitch that line to have the card slots. So again, I'm going to start from the bottom and we're going to head upwards. This time I'm going to back stitch, and then you can actually just stop at the card. You don't have to go all the way up. You can stop at the top of the card slots there. So you can see I can just erase that. So I tend to just rub it on my pants, or in this case my dress, and the chalk will in fact disappear. And then I've got my little line. So that's one side. The other thing I want to do is I want to add my tag to the inside. So I'm going to pop it here just below the card slot. So I'm just going to tack that in place as well, so that I don't forget later, because we all know I forget all the time. Okay, now we're up to the zipper tape. I haven't read these instructions. I did just peruse through the pictures really quickly about a week or two ago. So you want as much as the width, and then we're just going to turn the corners in. Or do we want a tail? Maybe we could do a little tail. So I'm going to cut a little bit longer. If you're only using one scissors, always cut the teeth at the back of the scissors. So if you manage to put a dent in them, it'll be at the back. So I'm going to, actually, I saw this thing I want to try. Somebody folded this over like so, and then stitched it down diagonally. And I've really wanted to try this, and I haven't had time. So you fold the stitches on top, like those teeth on top of each other, like this, which is quite difficult. They don't want to bend that way. And then I'm going to sew diagonally. Might go down to a joining stitch length. Oh, probably need to get closer than that. I also just ran out of bobbin thread, but I've got like an angle thing. And we're going to just do another bobbin, and then we'll do the other side. Bobbin has been restored, but I am just going to cut off all of these tails, and then we're going to do the same to the other side. So you want to start close to the teeth and then work your way diagonally out. This is what I saw, although they did use a zipper foot to get closer to the teeth. And then if you split this, you've got the right hand bits, which I thought was really clever. So I'm going to separate this, pop it along the edge like this. Now I might measure how far in from each edge I want to go. So we're going to go here, and then measure the other end where we want to stop as well. And I'm going to do that to both pieces. And two. So that is my start and stop point for the zipper on both pieces, to make sure that I get it even without trying. Now this is going to be my back piece, so I want this one on this side. I'm going to clip it, and so the teeth are going to start at that point, and we're just going to clip it down like this. And then when we get close to the end, I'm going to tuck it down on a right angle so that I don't stitch it but I get the end of it. Alright, so you want to make it sure that it's not going to be in the seam allowance. Then we're going to do the same to this one. So this will feel like it's the opposite way. So again, we're going to start here. Probably don't need that many clips. That was overkill, even for me. We're going to clip along this edge, making sure that the zipper doesn't move. You can also, instead of clipping it, use double-sided tape. Should have done that. Too late now. I've already clipped it. I mean, it's not too late, but you know. Now I'm just going to attach this with 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, so right on that edge, just to kind of tack the zipper in place so it behaves itself while I'm trying to sew. Then I'm just going to lift this up, put the next one under, do the same thing. So stitch, back stitch. Now when we get to the end, I'm going to back stitch there as well. Trim the tails, trim this little jump stitch. And the zipper is now on. Now this end, we might just leave it for a minute. So back wall, and this is our back wall. So I'm just going to fold the flap out of the way and then clip this together at this end. Now this end, you want to make sure that the zipper isn't going to be in the way. So you might still want to clip it down out of the way. You don't want to accidentally clip the end, otherwise you won't be able to get your zipper on later. Right, one side, grab the other side, same thing. So I'm going to clip the edge there. I'm going to, trim off these tails, I forgot, whoops. Turn that under so it's out of the way. I know it's not a very big tail. You can always leave more because it's easier to manipulate with a bigger one and it'll do what it's told better. You actually don't need that many clips. This one's got more clips on it because the flap's in the way and I don't want to fight it. So, stitch. This will be a 1/4 inch seam allowance. It's always 1/4 inch when it's up against the zipper. Just always. You can't get closer and you don't want to get further. It won't hold properly. Making sure that that tail, because that's still misbehaving, is out of the way. Stitch and back stitch. Since I'm now using a rivet magnet, we're going to do that at the end. But you can see now we've got a zipper. So it will zipper closed. I'm also thinking I might top stitch along the outside to make it pretty, because I like it pretty and I like top stitching. So I'm going to make sure that this seam allowance is underneath the outside piece. I'm going to pull this tail out of the way again so I don't accidentally stitch it, and then we're going to just top stitch at 1/8 of an inch, making sure that that doesn't fall off my table because it was going to. This side will be easier because there's no flap and there's no weight. So again, seam on the outside, top stitch it along. Because I've put fleece, this will just also help it sit nicer at the end. And the jump stitch. I'm going to go back to a joining stitch length of 2.5. But see, now we've got an outside. I'm going to tuck, I'm going to fold this and tuck it into the pocket so it's out of my way, because it is going to try and get in my way now. And I'm going to join the entire outside together, and we'll need to leave a gap. So I don't want to leave a gap on the outside piece, I want to leave it on the inside. So I'm going to start by clipping the whole of the outside end, and then I'm going to come over to the inside end. Now you can leave it the gap on the side or the bottom. I personally find the bottom easier, just as a general rule. And if you need to remember, so quite often you'll just get in the zone and you'll forget, you actually take a pen and you draw the lines on so that your brain remembers to start and stop. Now, the bigger the gap you leave, the easier it is to turn, but the harder it is to close. So just keep that in mind. Now, oh look, more tails I keep forgetting to cut. We're going to tuck the zipper in. I'm actually going to clip it to itself so it stays out of my seam allowance. Because if we sew that on before we put the zip on, we're going to have a problem. So now that they're clipped out of the way, I'm going to make sure that these seams line up inside to outside. And I always put one clip on each half to hold it in place. Then, make sure your clips are facing the right way. I have a bad habit of doing that. I get in the zone. Clip it all in place like so, and then we're going to do the same to this side. So I want to line up where the seam is, like so. And then I'm going to clip. Oh, I need one more. One more won't kill me. And now we're going to stitch. We're going to start and stop at the marks that we made. Again, you don't have to make the marks, but it just helps to remind your brain to leave a gap. Otherwise, you just sew the whole way, because that's what you do in a lot of patterns. So I'm going to start here. I'm going to stitch and back stitch. The back stitching will lock the stitches in. If you don't like back stitching, you can stitch and then lift up the foot and go back to the start and do it that way. I'm not going to do any more stitches there because that's outrageous. Or you can take the tails and tie them off. You have options. Now everything should pretty much just stay where it's told, because we've pinned it very, very well. Pivot. Oh, I need one more stitch. Now pivot. There we go. Stitching across, needle down, pivot around. Needle down, pivot, and again I've got the red mark, so we need to remember to stop at the right spot and backstitch or tie it off, or however you want to end your stitches. It's a small gap, but it'll be fine. Then you want to flip it over and make sure that it didn't move, and so that you haven't got like a gap somewhere, because that would be worse once we turn it through. Now I'm going to trim off more than a 45-degree angle. You want to cut more. I'm also going to take out the little divot here at the seam. It'll sit nicer if you do. So again, more than the 45-degree angle would be cutting it like that. The problem with that is it won't sit as nice, so you need to cut a little bit more on each side. And then again, where that joint is, cut out the bulk. It'll sit nicer. And then I'm making a lot of mess, but it's fine. That's why you should always have a bin handy when sewing. You make a lot of like little annoying mess. It's never big stuff, it's just lots of little bits. Now the fun bit, I get to turn it through. I always like to start with the flap, purely because it's the easy bit to pull through, and it's usually a very bulky piece, so the rest of it should follow through quite easily because it's less bulky. I'm just going to use my thumbs and shove all of that in. I'm not too worried how it's sitting yet. Okay. Turning stick, push it into those corners. Along that bottom seam to push it out nicely. Now don't forget you've got your slip pocket, because sometimes that will distort what you're doing. It's quite squishy with all the padding, actually. You can let go of the tails now. They're irrelevant. And even though I know I'm about to push it the other way, I am still going to push this out to do this closure. So you've got some options. You can hand stitch this closed, shut, closed, whatever, if you don't want to see the seam. You can use a matching color thread to make it relatively invisible, or you can do what I'm going to do. You want to make sure, if you're going to do it my way, you need to make sure that all the corners are very well pulled out. And you sew the whole way across the bottom so that it's less obvious, because the red's obviously going to stand out, and I'm pretty sure I don't have this kind of a color in this thread for this machine. I could use my domestic machine, although I don't think I've got a neutral in that either. So I'm going to start from one corner, and I'm going to stitch 1/8 of an inch from the end, like so, and go all the way across. And now it won't look weird that I've just sewn a random piece. It looks like it's all meant to be there, and it flows beautifully. I've got my tag, which will sit inside. For little clutches like this, the only other way I would put my mark on it is maybe here or here. So you got some options. You could put it here, depending on how big your logo is. Mine, the embroidered version's way too big to put there. But you could put a little one here, a little one here, here, or you can do what I do and put the thing on the inside. So I'm just smoothing that out to make sure it's all good in there. Then I'm going to take my zipper pull. I need a zipper end. If you don't have a zipper end, you could also just put whatever you want, really. When you pull it up, you want to make sure that it's even at the end, which mine is, which is awesome. A zipper end. Here's one I prepared earlier. Not really, it was just in my stash. It's still in a bag because I used to sell them in pairs. And this is the one that's left from the last lot. So I'm going to trim off that fuzzy bit. You don't want that. If you've got a cigarette lighter, you can melt the end of the zipper just a little bit and quickly. But I'm going to fold it into kind of a point and then literally shove the zipper end on to go in as far as it'll go. And electric screwdriver. This one is magnetized, so it'll pick it up. And then, I think I've had too much Red Bull this morning. Ugh. The end like that. So now the last thing to do, and this is another reason why I like rivet magnets. You do it at the end, so if at any point you sewed anything crooked, this will still line up because I'm doing it last instead of like halfway through. I'm also gonna get that and pop it away. Okay, so we need our hole punch and a rivet set, which I have not put in the machine yet. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to fold this in half and find the center. Now you can either pinch it or mark it with a pen or however you like to do it. There's my hole. Very much in the center. I am going to take this, and if you pull down like that on both sides, it'll crack open. The male piece always goes on the flap, so we're going to push that through. I'm also going to use a little bit of fray lock because even though I'm fairly confident it'll be fine, it is fabric and I do not want it to go gross. So I'm just going to put a little bit on each side. This is more thicker than the other stuff I used to use, and I do find it much easier, but it was more expensive. But the other one was so runny that I used to pour it out and it damaged a few things from discoloring stuff when it dried. which was less than fun. Ugh, I have a lot of different die sets. I'm actually going to do a video on them all one day soon. So, we need to get the one that will hold the mail. Pop that in. Screw it on. And then we're just going to set it in and squish it down. Like so. And then, when you do this, you don't want to make it as tight as possible because when there's stuff in, it's going to kind of drag the bag down. So you want to have it with a bit of a gap. Not a big gap. You don't want to have a big gap like this. That's too much. That's too tight. You kind of want to go, see how I just, so that's smooth. I'm just going to put it up there. Again, there are official measurements for this. So I want it there. I'm going to take my sew-all, fold this back where I can see it. I was going to show you, but I can't really see. That is where I want my hole. So I'm going to stab that all the way through, just so I know where it is. Then I can take this, making sure that nothing else is in the way. We're going to make that hole just a little bit bigger so that the magnet will go in. Again with the fray lock, you have to actually squeeze this to get it out. Then this one through there, the back on. If you didn't want it to go through the lining, you would do this before you close the bottom. You have that option as well. And then upside down. Now the bottom half's magnet, so it will actually clip in place and it'll want to because it's magnetized. And then we just squish that one down as well. Now 9 out of 10 times the magnet's powerful enough to take the base with you. But that's alright. So we zip it up, we fold it over, and that's it. Super quick. Super cute. You can do a lot with this. This was just some fabric I had lying around, and this piece here was gifted to me, actually, and the lining. It come with the ugly fabric, but it's not one of the ugly fabric. She just sent me some extras, which is why this is not a seemingly ugly pattern, although that would be cute to do. So there you go. Magnet, slip pocket. You can put your cards on the inside, but it still zippers shut, so you won't lose anything. I think that's quite cute. Anyway, thank you for tuning in, and I will see you guys next time. Bye-bye!